All right, it is 6 o'clock, and I do want to honor everyone's time. So I want to welcome all our LGUSD families to this first Fireside Chat. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Karen Briones. I'm the communications coordinator here for the school district. I'll be your technical host, helping both the attendees and the panelists this evening. So here are a few housekeeping items as we get started. The panel is going to provide some information up front and then answer questions that were submitted prior to the evening through that form. If you have an additional question, please drop it into the Q&A. We have panelists here who will be monitoring that and helping to answer those questions. And we'll also be answering additional questions towards the end of the evening. We're going to try to answer all questions this evening, but if we're unable to do so, we will follow up with a FAQ later, probably one day next week, to help give us some time to answer those questions. This session is being recorded and will be available for viewing next week. We will send that out. So thank you for being here. And with that, I want to introduce our moderator for the evening, our Superintendent Paul Johnson.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I've been looking forward to this first ever Fireside Chat in LGUSD. And I would like to introduce who's who on the screen. And maybe if you wouldn't mind just raising your hand, that would be great. Principals, Claire Vickers, the principal of Blossom Hill, Dr. Jenna Middleman, principal at Dave's, Jason DePong, principal at Lexington, Jenny Anderson, principal at Van Meter, and Mary Lonhart, principal at Fisher Middle School. Representing the district, there's myself, and also Jenna Middleman is playing two roles as Dave's principal and then next year's assistant superintendent for the district. Also, Teresa Fiskus, our chief business officer, is joining us. And then for LGEF, we have Jessica Johnson, president, Beth Jackson and Amanda Solons, co-treasurers, and Jen Shapiro, the One Community Los Gatos campaign head. I want to acknowledge next year's Home and School Club leadership, and these are the presidents for next year. Blossom Hill, Carrie Newland, Dave's, Jessica Gwynn, Lexington, Stacy Connolly, Van Meter, Kristen Finkelstein, and Fisher Middle School, Nitsi Dormady. Okay. And so we are going to go ahead and get started. And I first wanted to talk a little bit about how we all work together. And let's see, going on to the next slide there. And so you can see that the school district, LGUSD, is part of One Community, including Los Gatos Education Foundation. And for LGF, the funds shared resources are benefiting all schools through an annual grant to the district. And then the home and school clubs, the HSCs, are active parent groups at each school that support site specific needs. And how did this all come about? I just want to give a little history with this. Prior to One Community, we had feedback from parents that they were continually being asked for money from music boosters and HSCs and the district and LGF. And the concept of a one check program came together, which is the concept behind One Community. And how did that come together? And if we can go to the next slide. Whoops. Okay. What happened was we went through a massive strategic planning input process back in the fall of 2019 and beginning in 2020. And this included 29 focus groups. Each school had a very good participation. We held those in the MPRs. We went throughout the entire community. The Chamber of Commerce was involved, youth athletic groups and coaches, uh, 29 and 500 individuals participated in those focus groups. We had extensive surveys that went out to the community. We had in-person forums, coffee meetings. We wanted to make sure that anybody that wanted to provide input on what the vision of the district should be had that opportunity. And we had not had a strategic plan before with the vision for the school district. And so this all came together. We put together 6 strategic plan objective areas, as you can see there. And every fall, we mail out the year's action plans to every household in Los Gatos. And so you should have 5 or 6 of those little brochures in your homes. And I've been asked, well, how do I lend my voice to the vision and the direction of the school district? And I wanted to put a little plug in there that this fall, beginning actually in this August and September, we are going through the visioning process again as a community, and we'll be holding those focus groups at each one of the schools and in the community. And I encourage everyone to get involved and to lend your voice to that, to the revisioning coming up. So to go back to the history, I had this huge chart in my office that laid out a 5-year vision for the district with the priorities identified by the community members. And I had a lunch in my office with each president from the Home and School Club. Jen Shapiro, who is on this screen, was there as the Blossom Hill Home and School Club president. And we were looking at the strategic plan. We were talking about what is the best way to support the vision of the district. And Jesselyn Rissy, who was the Lexington Home and School Club president, said, you know, I think it would be great to have a uniform ask at the schools, and I would be willing to come together as a one community if my kids can have that. And she pointed to all of the strategic planning programs that were being proposed in the district. And I remember Lainey Haar, who was the Dave's Home and School Club president, saying, why don't we just do the one check and unite together so that our kids can have this in the community? And so that was conceived, that idea, over lunch. It included Deborah Weinstein was there as well as the executive director of LGF. And that happened. And then the strategic plan was adopted by the school board the night before schools closed for COVID. And this is why we added an additional year to the strategic plan because of that. So that's a little history lesson of one community and strategic planning for the district. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Teresa Fiscus.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to be here and part of the team for this chat tonight. For those of you that have not had a chance to meet me yet, I started with the district back in July, replacing Trace McNam, who retired. And so very happy to be here in this district. I love one community. I love the strategic plan. And I wanted to share a quick story before I get into my slides with how important the strategic plan is to this district. When I was interviewing for this district, my presentation that I had to make to the superintendent in the final interview panel was a presentation on the district strategic plan. And so I was told from the very, very beginning how important that is to this district and this community. So just thought I would share that before moving on to more information. And so if we can move to the next slide, Karen, please. I thought I would begin my section this evening answering a question that we often get here in the district. And so many people question how their property taxes are applied to different organizations and how much of that actually goes to schools here in Los Gatos. And so we were able to pull some data from the losgatosca.gov website. And what it showed is that approximately 40% of property taxes actually go to K-12 education, with a little over 23% of that going to our adult school district and 17% of that going to the high school district. Some other agencies that receive a piece of these property taxes are the community college district, as well as water and fire districts, and air quality and open space districts. So there are quite a few agencies that derive their support from the property taxes paid here. Next slide, please. Thank you. And I thought the next question, and probably the most important of all, at least in my opinion, is how does the school district prioritize our funding? And so I wanted to show that our expenses this year are projected at a little over 61 million. We are funding that by using our current revenues of a little over 58 million and then drawing on our reserves of almost $3 million. That 61 million is broken out in the pie chart. And as you can see, the very, very large blue section is what is comprised of our salaries and benefits. So 85% of our budget is salaries and benefits. This is very common in schools, as we all know that the most important piece in every child's education is the teacher standing in front of them in the classroom. In addition, our strategic plan includes an objective to attract and retain top-tier teachers and develop excellent staff in a supportive and quality work environment. To meet this objective, the goal is to target our staff's total compensation to be in the top decile of our comparable districts. The next line here is our materials and supplies budget, which is funded. It makes up only 3% of our budget. And this is where we fund all of our school sites. And so basically the money we send to our schools to buy classroom supplies, supplies for our teachers, funding for the copiers and copy paper, which is surprisingly expensive here in school districts, administrative costs, so supplies for the office, as well as professional development, and then some discretion at the principal's level for what's needed at each individual school site. And so our plan for funding those allocations next year is that we will be sending out $100 per student to each of our elementary schools and $110 for each student at our middle school. Based on our research, we do believe that this is still significantly more than most of our neighboring school districts are sending out to school sites for supplies and other items. These funds, again, can be used to purchase basic classroom and teacher supplies, professional development, and anything for the office. As a district, I think it's important to point out that we are legally required to cover the cost of all basic education supplies, while we look to the generous support of our home and school clubs to provide the additional funding so that our students and teachers have access to additional supplies that make our classrooms more inviting and our lessons and projects more exciting. I can say, being a person who's come from a state-funded district, the classrooms here in Los Gatos look significantly different. There is a kindergarten classroom over at Van Meter that is my favorite place in the world. Every time I walk in there, I just feel better. And that's all to the credit of the teacher and the furnishings she selected, as well as the home and school clubs, who without their funding, we would have never been able to do that in our classrooms. And so again, really appreciative of the support that's helping offset our district contribution to those classroom costs. And then the next category, where we spend 11% of our budget, this is where we are paying for our services and operating expenses. And so for contracted services, these are costs related to services that we have to outsource, either for efficiency purposes or we just don't have the staff trained to meet the needs of certain students. And so this is usually related to our education, or I'm sorry, our special education program. But again, when we don't have staff on hand that can meet the need of students, we always go outside and contract with people who can do that. We also, like all homeowners, have to pay the common operating costs. So we do also pay utilities and insurance, which make up a large percentage of that category. And then lastly, it's where professional development sometimes falls. It's also where we pay for the softwares and licenses being used at our school sites, and any other type of small service. And then lastly, very small category, 1% of our budget classified as other. That is funding that is actually spent for student services that are provided by either a county office of education or a JPA. And so the state of California requires that we classify those services in another category so that when they compile all the expenses at the state level, they're not duplicating, because those are also shown as expenses at the county office or JPAs. So that is a good representation of our budget. That's what we just presented as of second interim to our board back in March. So with that, Karen, if we could move on to the next slide, please. I thought it would be good to share with you our comparable districts. Since I referenced it in the last slide, I thought I would show you and give you a sneak peek of what that looks like. And so what this chart is showing you is a revenue comparison to our comparable districts on a per pupil amount. So this has all been taken in different categories of funding divided by total student enrollment to come up with the per pupil funding. What I found interesting on this slide is that Los Gatos actually ranks 8th in this funding model. And then the even more significant point for me was that we actually rank or are receiving only $988 more a student than the state average. And so with that, Paul, is there anything you would like to share along with this slide?
Well, this slide does tell a story. And so you can look at Los Altos, for example, and Los Altos receives about $2,000 more a student from property taxes, but they have a higher other local. So the other local includes parent contributions, parent donations, and parcel taxes. And that means that they have a higher amount being contributed locally. And then if you look at Mill Valley, it's interesting. They're ranked 6th. They receive less, $2,000 less per student than Los Gatos, but their other local is off the charts. And that includes, they have a higher parcel tax and a foundation that regularly brings in upwards of $3 million. And so this is why in a district like Los Gatos, the parent donations are critical because they help bridge the gap. And I just want to echo what you said, Teresa, that it's startling to see that we are only $1,000 off per student compared to the state average, which is really, really telling. But it's really interesting data.
Thank you, Paul. Karen, next slide, please. Okay, so the question, why is there a gap? Or in other words, why do property taxes not cover the full cost of educating our students? So prior to 1978, when Prop 13 was passed, property taxes were escalating at a much higher rate, keeping school funding in line with the cost of inflation. When Prop 13 passed, it gave homeowners the much needed relief from the skyrocketing property taxes. However, that had a significant impact on schools. Funding plummeted, making in the first few years, causing many school districts to make drastic budget cuts. And unfortunately, those cuts often come in the form of staffing. As I explained on our last slide, 85% of our budget is staffing, and that's very common across the state. And so when districts have to quickly make drastic budget cuts, unfortunately, that often looks like layoffs, and it looks like taking people off campus. And we know that is one of the worst things you can do for students, and that student outcomes often drastically decline the second that starts happening. And so to combat that, education foundations started popping up around the state, and they really took on the charge of fundraising for school districts, mainly to bring back that staffing, to bring back the staffing that was cut during that major reduction in school funding. And really what fell out over time was all of the extra, right? All of the things that added to students' education. So yes, we kept kindergarten through 12th grade and we have standard classrooms, but what we lost was the arts, and we lost music, and we lost all of the extra, additional electives that really help children grow. And so that was so concerning to the school community and parents. And again, that's why the charge popped up. And again, we started seeing education foundations all over the state. Here in Los Gatos, we benefit from the support of One Community, which is, again, a partnership between our Education Foundation and our home and school clubs. Jessica will certainly get into this relationship and in explaining each side of that in much more detail in a few more slides. But what I do just want to point out is how lucky we are to receive that support. Without that support, Los Gatos would be looking at making budget reductions and having to reduce staffing as well. So again, we are very lucky here to receive that support. It is parents investing their very precious time working for our school district to make sure we can provide the best for students. Next slide, please. And so I did kind of touch on this on the last slide, but so how does One Community Los Gatos fit into our overall budget picture? Here, as you can see, the total cost of educating a student here in Los Gatos is $22,000. We come to that by basically taking our overall expenses and dividing by our enrollment. And then we fund that with our property tax, our state and federal funds, as well as our parcel tax. But to give you some percentages, our property tax covers about 80% of that cost. Our federal and state grants make up 9%. Our parcel tax makes up 6%, which leaves a 5% shortfall. And 5% doesn't sound that big until you look at 5% of a $55 million budget. And it becomes very, very significant. And so One Community helps us fill that gap by providing donations. We're able to fully cover the cost of educating our students without, again, having to reduce all of that extra support we brought into our schools. And with that, I'm happy and excited to turn it over to Jessica Johnson, who is the president of LGEF, and will take us on into the presentation.
Thank you so much, Teresa. You are such a wealth of information, and we are so grateful to have you in our district. We appreciate you so much. I'd like to go through a few slides now to give you some additional information about the One Community Los Gatos fundraising campaign, where your contributions go and how those dollars are put to work to enrich our children's education. So what is OCLG? It's a unified parent-led fundraising campaign that helps ensure every LGUSD student receives a well-rounded education. And that's one that's going above and beyond the basics to include enrichment programs like STEAM, PE, counseling, music, library, all the wonderful things we have in our district that not everyone has, to our extent at least. One Community Los Gatos is a collaboration that makes it easy for families to support public education in Los Gatos through a single campaign that financially supports both the home and school club budgets at each school and the LGEF grant to the Los Gatos Union School District. Our campaign aligns with and helps fund the LGUSD strategic plan, which, as Paul mentioned, is a 5-year vision crafted with input from families, teachers, students, as well as the broader community. And it helps support the people and programs that bring this plan to life. So how does it work? It's divided into 2 phases. The first phase is our education period, which we are in now. And this is a new thing to LGEF and One Community. So we're very excited about this. It's a chance for families to learn about why we need donations and how they're used, to get to know our specialists that some of us know and love, but others may not be as familiar with, and then to understand the real impact on our classroom and kids. Our fundraising giving period will start in August, and you'll see in-person asks at STEAM nights, back to school night, and other parent meetings. You'll see digital asks via the Parent Square and other school communications. And our goal is to raise $2.6 million each year to help fund both the home and school clubs and LGEF's grant to the district. And again, the campaign is how we as parents ensure that every child at all 5 LGUSD schools have equal access to the specialist support and experience that shape our students into the amazing people they are. Next slide, please, Karen. Okay, so when you donate to One Community Los Gatos, your contribution is supporting both district-wide enrichment and school-specific priorities. So both are supported through your donations. And this funding model reflects directly what we heard from you guys. In our recent parent survey, many of you shared that you highly value programs like art and STEAM and music and counseling, and that feedback directly aligns with how your $1,600 donation is used. So the first part of your donation supports the shared enrichment staff who rotate through all 5 LGUSD schools. That includes STEAM teachers, PE instructors, music and art teachers, school counselors, and librarians. These staff members are not fully funded by the state, and your support makes it possible for us to offer them in every school in the district. And that is benefiting every student in the district because they're able to travel between the sites. The second part of your donation supports your child's individual school through the home and school club. And parents say they really appreciate seeing their dollars at work in things like field trips, classroom materials, campus improvements, and community building events. And that's exactly what this portion covers, the benefits to your child's school. Together, we work very closely to help fulfill the LGUSD strategic plan, which again is that 5-year vision we've talked about to help with that we crafted with all of your input 6 years ago in this instant because of COVID. But the district is starting to work on the new strategic plan, as Paul mentioned earlier in the presentation. And I would just highly encourage each and every one of you to get involved with that strategic planning. This is the chance where our voices can really be heard about how the dollars are directed and what programs are going to be funded and implemented. And I just really encourage you all to please join those focus groups, fill out the surveys, and get your input in, because the district really listens and takes our input seriously. And that's why we have some of these amazing programs today that we have now. When my older son, who's a 9th grader now, went through the elementaries, he didn't have Spanish. They had one or maybe 2 art projects. And now seeing what the education is like for my younger kids, it is vastly different with the strategic plan. So please, please, please participate in that process. Next slide, please. All right, so now I'll go into a little bit more about what specifically your contributions cover. So your suggested donation of $1,600 per student is split between the district-wide resources through the LGEF grant to the district, as well as the school-specific initiatives through your home and school clubs. So that first portion to LGEF is money that goes in a grant to the district to help fund the many specialists that you guys have told us are critical, like the STEAM teachers, art and music instructors, school counselors, librarians, and PE staff. Using the money from the LGEF grant, the district's able to hire staff members who rotate across all the schools, like I mentioned before, which ensures everyone in our district has access to robust enrichment learning experiences. And our survey did show that families deeply value these enrichment opportunities, particularly in music, art, and STEAM, and want to see their donations supporting these areas. And then many of you also said you wanted to see more clarity on where that money goes, so we're sharing these details with you now, and I will get even further into this on the next slide. The second portion of your donation stays at your child's school, managed by the Home and School Club. It covers all the practical, visible items you see. So one example is at Dave's Avenue. When I was treasurer, we were able to approve an expenditure for new classroom seats that are flexible seating and allows your children to wiggle and move. And these little things, or they seem little, but they really help the students engage in education. And as an occupational therapist, I am so fortunate our schools have those type of flexible seating arrangements and extras in the classroom. It also covers things like field trips. I know I mentioned I'm an OT and I work in a neighboring school district. Every year, we are trying to get checks from parents to fund the Great America field trip for the 8th graders. And every year we get an announcement 3 days before the field trip that they need $3,000 to $6,000 or they're going to cancel the field trip. And you would not believe the sadness that runs through the school when they start making those announcements. And inevitably, some generous parent has to come in and write a check for $3,000 to $6,000 and the field trip will happen. But we are fortunate to not be in a situation like that here in Los Gatos. And it also covers teacher appreciation, which I know many of you are so passionate about, and we all love and support our teachers so much, so we really want to appreciate them. Okay, next slide. Now we're going to get into the real division of numbers. So how is your $1,600 contribution used? Your contribution is broken down into these various enrichment programs that the strategic plan addresses. 30% stays directly with your home and school club. Art and STEAM programs each get 13%. 12% goes to music programs, 8% to mental health, 7% support electives and clubs, 6% funds library and PE. And finally, there's a little 1% that you can see, and I just want to highlight this because this is a really special program that LGEF implemented a few years back, and it's called the Innovation Grant Program. And that basically allows teachers from anywhere in the entire district who want to implement some kind of innovative program or activity into their classroom to apply for one of these grants. And we've been able to fund so many cool projects throughout the district using this money every year. Next slide, please. I just want you to get to see some of the friendly faces that you get to see around your campus and just remind you that these are the wonderful people that make up these enrichment programs that your contributions support. And they are all outstanding teachers and educators. I know many of you are involved in the music program and the art program, and we are just so fortunate to have these superstars at our school. Next slide, please. So how does LGEF fund our grant to the district? We have been working really hard to make changes this year based on your feedback during this new education period that we started in January. We've been conducting donor and non-donor surveys to learn more about what's important to you guys and what helps with your contribution. We've done teacher surveys. We've gathered input from homeschool club presidents and principals, and we've even completed informal conversations with many of you throughout the district. And now we're hosting this amazing Fireside Chat. So thank you guys all for supporting us and coming to hear about these efforts. We've heard from these surveys that parents want to support public education, but they also really care passionately about how the funds are used and how their kids are benefiting from their donations. And that feedback we've been getting from you is shaping how we communicate and prioritize our activities. And then one other point I just want to address with this slide is that because the One Community Los Gatos parent fundraising campaign does not fully fund LGEF's grant to the district, and it does not fully fund the home and school club budgets, both of us will continue to have other fundraising activities as well. And I just want to highlight some of the ones LGEF does. I know many of you participate in the auctions and the fun events at your school, but LGEF has some different opportunities. So we have an amazing business program with many generous supporters throughout the community. And I'm sure you've noticed our banners. They're all over town. They're all over the schools to recognize these generous companies. We also have a real estate program to help realtors get involved with supporting our schools because they're benefiting from these amazing schools as well. It keeps property values high. We also have several new events that we're trying out this year to bring the entire community together while using proceeds from ticket sales and concession sales to support the enrichment programs. So a couple of shout outs here. I just hope that many of you are planning to attend the Harlem Wizards basketball show that we're hosting with 23 LGUSD staff players on Saturday, May 3rd at Fisher. Thank you all for your being so brave and jumping in to support One Community in this event. And also a huge thank you to the parents who are participating in our new pickleball tournament this year. And we'd love to see all of you at the finals on May 9th at the JCC. It's going to be a really fun event, and you should come cheer on your friends who are participating. Another way we help fill the deficit there is through our major donor program that we're getting started. We're trying to bring high donors throughout the community together to support LGUSD. And then finally, we secure outside grants like our El Camino grant that supports our mental health counselors, as well as the Town of Los Gatos grant that helps fund our STEAM nights. And then I just really want to thank you for your input over the past couple of months. It's helping us serve the children better and with greater transparency as well. And as Karen mentioned, we will be posting FAQs as well as this presentation on the onecommunitylg.org website. And you'll also be seeing some more detailed reporting coming through via email later next month as well. So I hope this info has been really helpful. And now I'd like to focus on some of the other parent questions we've received through the Fireside Chat survey. We had a number of questions that were very similar. And so we picked a few representative samples to answer now, but feel free to keep adding your questions to the chat. And with that, I will turn it over to Jenna Middleman, who's our fantastic Dave's Avenue principal and who will be our amazing assistant superintendent next school year as well. So Jenna, go ahead.
All right. Good evening. Thank you, Jessica, for that amazing just education period. I think that I'm 7 years in as a proud Team LGUSD member, and I'm still learning, and I learn new things every year. And I think as we begin to go into our first question, and we could go to the next slide, please. When I think about what do I love with my principal hat on and being a parent, I think about, why LGUSD? And so that brings us to parent question number 1. How do the costs of these programs compare to the costs of parents seeking outside classes? And before I talk about that, I want to just share my principal perspective after 7 years is that I receive emails and phone call inquiries and walk-ins from families who are looking to purchase or rent homes in Los Gatos because they've heard great things about our district. And I think that's really important to hear. I also, one of the silver linings, in my opinion, post-COVID was there were a lot of neighboring private schools where families heard about Los Gatos and heard about the fact that we had Spanish, art, music, STEAM, PBL, and the list goes on. And they said, well, wait a minute. We want to learn more. And so it brings me to my thinking about the families that have said, we can't believe we didn't come sooner. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to join our neighboring public school and our what they perceive as a small contribution of $1,600. We cannot believe that our kids get access to all these amazing programs. So now let me go into depth a little bit. I'm sure you all can think about the things that your kiddos love outside of school. As a mom of 2 daughters who were in the competitive dance world for many years, I know that that was a commitment and a sacrifice that my husband and I made to help them be involved with something that they love. Many of you might have students that thrive with instruments or thrive with taekwondo or gymnastics, and the list goes on. And I ask you to really just reflect about what do those per session or those monthly payments cost for all of those extracurriculars that your children love. And I've recruited some information from a few parents in the Dave's Avenue community. And for example, gymnastics in Los Gatos could be $140 a month for 4 classes. Another example of something like piano could be $90 per session, or tennis in a local facility could be $40 per hour. And so when we start to think about the cost that we as parents are committed to giving our kiddos everything that they love, we have to do a cost analysis of our $1,600 ask, which equates to $160 per month or $40 a week. Your children get access to all of these wonderful programs and enrichments, art, music, Spanish, PE, and more, that really contributes to their love for all of these pathways that we give them access to. And at the end of the day, we know that each student has their own passions, but there are Dave's Avenue students that get to school every single day because they know that they have access to a librarian during recess or lunch. Or we have students that come to school because they love having music. And just to give parents an idea, if we're going to look at the analysis of minutes, a typical fourth grader in Los Gatos Union School District is granted access to 75 minutes of PE every week. And that is with a PE teacher dedicated to a class. They receive in fourth grade 45 minutes of music a week, 30 minutes of library a week, 45 minutes of Spanish a week. So when we think about the ask of a $1,600 check annually or $160 per month, I really hope that that helps to break down, in my opinion, what a steal of this ask is for all kids to have access to these amazing enrichments. Thank you.
Great, Jenna. Thank you. We're going to go on to the next question. Are there families in our school community who might be in need and unable to contribute at this time? And the answer is definitely yes. And we're very sensitive to the families that are not able to pay. I remember calling on a phone-a-thon before, calling a family and randomly to ask for donations. And the family said, we love the school district. And it was the mom that answered the phone, but my husband just lost his job. And would it be okay if we contributed $20? And I says, oh, you are just, sure, that's fine. And don't worry about it. Any amount that you can afford is appreciated. And so we just really wanted to stress that we realize that there are families in our school community that are in need, and so they are unable to contribute at this time. I was wondering, Jessica, if you would mind sharing kind of that brainstorm about the sponsor.
Sure, yeah. So one of the bits of feedback we've gotten through our surveys is that not every family can afford the $1,600 ask. And so one thing we kind of talked about is how can we help these families? Like, what can we do? And we're going to be adding to our donation page an option to sponsor another family in need. So if you're out making your donation and you're, are happy with everything and you feel like you want to sponsor another family, that's going to be an option moving forward. So we're really excited about that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Why don't we go on to our next question? Can you provide an analysis of the results we are seeing from the enrichment programs and whether we are assessing closely to see if adjustments need to be made to maximize impact of the program, such as determining if a new program would be better than an existing one? That's a great question. And I wanted to just focus on a few of the things that one community provides, really that enhances all of our classrooms in the district. And I wanted to begin with music. And so music, if you've ever been to Music in the Park, in fact, Jenny Anderson, would you mind telling us, as a former music teacher, how many trophies, not that you have to remember how many trophies, but what happens at the Music in the Park at Great America when our Fisher music programs go perform there?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Hello, everybody. Yes, as a former music teacher at the middle school, we take a good portion of our ensembles to an event called Music in the Parks every spring. And we bus the kids to a local school where Other kids from other schools are also there performing with their music ensembles, and we perform for an adjudicated audience. So we have a panel of adjudicators that are giving live feedback while they're looking at our music and following along. And then all of the performing ensembles from the whole actually weekend go to the theme park, and with their school ensembles, they're all in their t-shirts. It's a lot of fun. You can see kids from different music programs all through the park that day. And then there's an award ceremony later in the evening at the amusement park, and each class gets to have a representative go up, and we hear our scores. They are announced to everyone there. Not just our scores according to the adjudicators, but our placements amongst the other schools, and a rating category. So Fisher typically is that almost that annoying school that we just have so many kids there, and they're all screaming and cheering, and then they typically do very, very well and are often winning first place, superior ratings, and sometimes the overall awards for the entire categories.
All right, thank you. One area of the strategic plan is Spanish. And how did that come about? Well, the parents, when they were surveyed and in the focus groups, identified foreign language as one of the highest priorities. And interestingly enough, so did the teaching staff identify that. And so students learning a world language, it helps with brain development and enhances their academic achievement. Just to give you a few snapshots, third graders now in the district are writing paragraphs in Espanol. I popped into Maestro Munoz's class. I couldn't believe it. I was just really proud of them. Placement into middle school Spanish and high school Spanish is being affected in a positive way. And then the question asked about if we're assessing closely. And one thing that we're doing to assess is a K-12 World Language Committee that involves high school teachers from Los Gatos High, and developing a K-12 articulation program for world language. And I know that next year that group is going to meet again, and I'm sure that will be part of our next strategic plan, is how to enhance and take the next steps on our world language program. One areas of our strategic plans, STEAM and PBL, project-based learning, are big priorities. And they affect academic achievement in math, because math is part of STEAM, and so is math and science and reading are part of project-based learning. This past year, Los Gatos Union School District had the highest growth rate on test scores in math and science compared to any school district in Santa Clara County. And we were really making progress and proud of our teachers and our students in this area. I wanted to mention counseling. So the parent community, the teachers, and the classified staff for feedback identified student wellness as the top priority in the strategic plan. The community, meaning the Chamber of Commerce and residents of Los Gatos, identified STEAM as the top priority. Although STEAM made it onto everybody's list in the top 5. And so what has happened with counseling is we've doubled the number of counselors in the district. And thanks to LGF, they have written a grant to the Communal Health Foundation that has helped to fund an additional counselor. And when we're talking about assessing to see if we need to make adjustments, I know last year that we applied for a wellness coach for that would be able to work at Fisher. And there wasn't enough funding from Communal Health, But then when a county grant came along, we already had the application written, and Misty Hartung, our Director of Student Services, put the grant together, and now we're funding a wellness coach, which is just amazing, to work in our student wellness center. And so we do constantly do a spot check on our plans to see how we can improve our programs. And I wanted to ask the principals if any of you have anything to add to that, because you've been front and center with PBL taking place in classrooms and seeing the faces of students when they're in these programs and how their education is being enhanced. So I'm just tossing the baton there. And so feel free to jump in.
I would love to add, and Jenny used the phrase, when our music programs go to Great America, that annoying school. We are not the annoying school. We're the amazing Fisher Middle School that just has such a robust music program. But what we have seen over the last several years is the enhancement to the Fisher program because of the elementary school program. So for many years, the Fisher teachers were actually part of the teaching staff at the elementary school sites and were able to, coach the kids and bring them forward. We've now added the teachers at the elementary school sites, freeing up the Fisher teachers to add and give more to the Fisher school site. I think when we work closely with Los Gatos High School and transition our students to the high school, we are helping to support and build their program as well as part of the greater Los Gatos Music Booster program. I think that's just one piece for us. And then the other piece, speaking as Paul mentioned earlier, regarding our Spanish program, our students who complete the Spanish 1 class as an 8th grader successfully transitioned to Spanish 2 in the high school, allowing them other options at the higher level in terms of athletics, additional science or math classes, those sorts of things. But we have a strong articulation with the world language program for French and Spanish at the high school. And the support of having the TK8 program, I think, will only continue to provide strength to the Fisher program and allow those kids to successfully launch into the high school setting. So I'll just throw out the music and the Spanish in terms of some things I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And I can tag on. I would like to speak to project-based learning. Our STEAM TOSAs, in collaboration with all of our general education teachers and specialists, the fact that we almost have 100% of all LGUSD teachers trained in project-based learning is a huge feat that I have not seen in neighboring school districts in Santa Clara County. So it's something that I'm really proud to watch that evolve and be a part of. Most importantly, because of how it impacts students and how it gives students access to participate and collaborate and really drive their learning in a very controlled environment. And I just want to make a connection to a 4th grade project-based learning project at Dave's Avenue that is in progress, and it's titled Unveiling Our Roots, Exploring Culture and Identity. And a lot of these project-based learning, it's opportunities to connect with parents within our community, high tech. Just last week, Councilman Rob Moore from town of Los Gatos visited our 4th graders, talked about everything that is going on in our town, how students can become more involved and informed. And so project-based learning really lends itself to some exciting work that is really promoting student agency, voice, and choice. And our teachers are on board, and it's really exciting to watch.
Great. Principal Vickers, do you have anything to add to that? Just observation from Blossom
I
Hill?
do. Thank you so much, Paul. Good evening, everybody. When I think of enrichment programs, something that comes right to my mind is our SEL programs, and with all of our counseling. And constantly I have teachers at Blossom Hill saying, hey, we're on our way to Ms. Crowley for SEL. And I have just seen over the course of my years here in LGUSD so much growth in that arena. Not only do we have wonderful collaboration with a middle school counselors, oftentimes Savannah or Mr. No will come over to Blossom, but it's vice versa. So I do want to say, when I do think of enrichment, yes, of course, I think of PBL and Spanish and music, but we can't forget the rich, rich curriculum our kids are getting in social and emotional literacy.
Great, thank you. We're very proud of our strategic planning programs and appreciate all of the heavy lifting that our teachers do to bring this about, including some of our TOSIS, teachers on special assignment. Why don't we go to the next question? Why do we have a $1,600 ask per student while other neighboring districts do not? And before we do that, I'm looking at my notes here. Can we go back to the previous question just for a second? Principal DePong, I have a note here that our curriculum director, Rhonda Beasley, was up at Lex, and she came back very proud about the PBL learning from TK. And would you mind sharing about that project-based learning lesson? And this is just an example of what that looks like in the classroom.
Yeah, I was thinking about adding that in. It just happened, it was this morning. And it was amazing. So our TK teachers brought in this expert photographer a couple weeks ago who worked with the students. These are TK students talking about how to take photographs. The kids went outside, were taking selfies, taking close-up pictures of nature. So this is all from a 3-foot level or something like that. A lot of fun, but then the whole unit in itself connected to one of our IB units, but it was about culture and how TK students define culture. Actually, I had a little picture here. I was trying to look at it. I mean, some of the questions that these kids are coming up with were, it's where you come from, your clothing, it's your family celebrations, what we do with our families on the weekend, how we play, our religion, our church, our bedtime. And parents took photos from home, and all these kids had posters that they set up in our NPR this morning. And we invited in families to come look at these basically presentations. And these little ones were amazing. They actually stood still for quite a long time in front of these posters with photos. And they were talking to parents about their culture just based on what they do with their families at home. And so it was a huge hit. We were very excited about it. And it blew our minds what 4- and 5-year-olds could do. And again, this is part of our project-based learning and just working on presentation skills and exploration and hands-on. So yeah, it's quite exciting. And it's the first time they did it. We'll see it develop in the future.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Okay, now we can go to the next question. Why do we have a $1,600 ask, and what about other neighboring school districts? So we're not going to single out particular schools, but we can speak to neighboring school districts. And I just wanted to paint a contrast between Los Gatos and neighboring school districts. And we can start with Spanish. And in our district, we have credentialed, trained Spanish teachers that where it's part of the daily curriculum. They are really amazing. They know how to teach Spanish through total immersion. It's inspiring to go into the classrooms. In neighboring school districts, it would be an after-school program for Spanish. I'm not aware of any other public school district. If anybody knows, let me know. But a public school district that offers Spanish instruction in California. There are examples in private schools which come with hefty tuitions where they might have world language instruction as part of the daily curriculum. But that's a contrast. Dance. Um, uh, Mrs. Lonhart, would you mind sharing one of our uh, things that we're most proud of in our dance program at Fisher and what that entails?
There we go. Excuse me. I just was switching from my headset to my speaker. So the dance program at Fisher is such a robust program that it is the opportunity for students to take dance instead in as their PE class, because they participate in many of the other PE activities such as running the mile and things like that, but they do all the pieces regarding fitness and strength and all those components of a robust PE program. And each year we have almost always have a waiting list of students that are interested in participating in the dance program. And if you've ever had the opportunity to just even speak with Wendy Meyer, you know that her enthusiasm is contagious, but more importantly, her skill and expertise is phenomenal. And she not only does a formal recital at the end of the year, she does all kinds of activities so that students can participate in performances during the school year. So at a spirit activity, at a rally, all those kinds of things. And new this year, Wendy Meyer is supporting our brand new musical theater class led by Corey Miller. And the two of them are working together so that Wendy's dance and performance expertise is supporting Corey's choral instruction and performance instruction to create what we think is going to be a great first production at the end in May for everyone. So the other piece of it is Fisher long ago built a beautiful dance studio that I have never seen a studio such as this in a public school, let alone a public middle school. So the facility, the teacher, all of it are just top notch.
Okay. So
I just want to say about dance, I know many families don't have kids kids may not be interested in dance, but both my sons had their favorite part of the exploratory wheel was dance. So who knew, right?
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And so that's something that is unique to the $1,600 ask, which is not found in typical neighboring school districts. Art. We are so blessed in our school district to have our credentialed art teachers, and they provide 17 in-depth lessons throughout the year, which is basically kind of like every other week for all of our elementary students. And this is Mrs. Hawk and Mrs. Anderson, and they are amazing. That's Los Gatos, typical in a neighboring school district, volunteer art. Either volunteer art teachers that go from the provide that in the classes, and that's a contrast. The music, let's see. Jenny Anderson, can we put you on the spot? So typically, in a middle school, maybe in a neighboring district, what would be typical for like a middle school music program?
Sure, a typical music program in a neighboring school district would have one music teacher. So they would teach maybe a couple of periods of band, maybe a jazz band, and maybe a choir. And at our middle school, we have 5 periods of orchestra, 5 periods of band, I think 3 periods of choir. We have musical theater, and we have enrichment opportunities for the students to take an additional kind of enrichment musical class during the flex time. So it is so robust and well-rounded, and also provides levels that kids can move through from beginning all the way beginning, intermediate, and advanced. So you very rarely, you won't see that in our neighboring schools. You'll see maybe one strand of a program and maybe an after-school opportunity.
Yeah. And so that program that you described at Fisher, you didn't say it, but I'm going to say it. It's the finest in Santa Clara County for middle school. And then I'm just curious about elementary, like typically at the elementary level, because we have classroom music. And we also have our other like choir and orchestra and band. Would you mind contrasting that with neighboring possibilities, neighboring school
Absolutely.
districts?
Some districts will provide a credentialed music teacher to come in, but a lot of times it might be limited to perhaps like fourth and fifth grade. And then it might be on the home and school club, for example, to contract out with a non-credentialed teacher to come in and do maybe a weekly movement class for, I'm saying movement instead of PE, but something like a starting arts type of program where they're paying someone who's not a credentialed teacher, but is able to provide a little bit of music, more enrichment style. And again, it may not be the whole, every single grade level in the school. It may be for a limited time period. And yeah, ours is completely robust, TK through fifth. We offer ukulele, recorders, general music, singing, movement, rhythm instruments. And then in the fifth grade, they can choose choir, vocal music, string music, or wind and percussion. So again, it's so robust. It is top tier, and it really sets up, as Mary pointed out, the middle school program for such high levels of success.
Okay. So we hope that we've been able to thank you for that. To contrast, what is provided through one community. And when you go to a music concert or the art show, which is coming up here just in a couple of weeks, those programs would not exist that provide so much joy for our students without one community. So Jessica and the whole team and the home and school club presidents, we really appreciate it. And we consider ourselves spoiled as educators to be able to work in this environment where there's so much joy spread around to students. Let's see. Why don't we go on to our, let's see, is that wrap up our pre-question we had loaded in there? Okay. And
Yes, Paul, I think there were a couple of questions that came in. And I just wanted to see, hold on, just trying to see what's here. I'm going to toss this one out. Thanks for the event. Help me understand how we're able to pay top decile teacher salaries with only modest above average state funding of $22,000. What is the trade-off for that level of pay generosity, fewer teachers, etc.?
okay. Teresa, would you mind hopping in?
I am happy to take the lead on that. And then if the principals or anyone else want to jump in, please feel free to do so at the end. And so first and foremost, I want to give credit to our school board and our financial advisory committee. And so here in Los Gatos, I can say, coming from multiple other school districts, that we are very lucky to have an extremely financially savvy school board and the financial advisory committee. And because of that, they actually require the districts to do multi-year projections that are significantly more expanded than most school districts do. And so here in Los Gatos, we do a current year plus 5 out years in our multi-year projection. Having that level of financial forecast really helps us foresee any budget issues far enough in advance that we're able to start tackling that well before we get there. And what happens in a lot of other school districts is that they only do the budget and a current 2 out years. And what happens there is that often they may give a compensation increase that really doesn't have a problem until the 3rd or 4th year. And what that results in is them getting to that 3rd or 4th year and saying, oh my goodness, we are going to go bankrupt. And then they make drastic cuts. And again, what those cuts often are to our staff, often teacher classrooms. And so I would say because, again, our school board and that financial advisory committee demand that level of financial forecast, again, it really puts us in a good spot where we can do that. A couple other things I think this district does really well is one, our special education costs. So special education costs across the state can be a significant problem for a lot of districts if they don't manage that program very well. And I would say confidently that I believe we have the best special director of special education in all of the state who works really hard to serve our students and to serve them here. And so why that matters is that when we send our students away, that cost is so much higher because we have to pay transportation and sometimes room and board. We often, when you're not running a good special education program, you often run into a lot of lawsuits with parents who don't feel their children's needs are being met. And so that is a significant area here in Los Gatos where we don't have outrageous cost. We're doing a very good job of managing. We have brought a lot of our students home and have very, very little outside service to meet the needs. So again, that also comes with cost savings. Other areas is things like our supplies. While I do feel like we fund our school sites at a very, very significant level, we don't fund everything else very high. So we work really carefully in our custodial budget to, be very cost effective and be buying bulk supplies to reduce costs there. And then we also run a very lean district office. If you come by here, there's not too many of us sitting in this building, which helps that as well. So those would be kind of my most important pieces on why the district is able to afford to pay our teachers in the top decile. I would say that I don't believe we do have fewer teachers than the average. I know that our class sizes are in line with a lot of our neighboring districts, and that a lot of our classes are actually far below the class size maximum. And so I think we've done a good job, again, of being able to reach that top compensation pay without doing that by reducing teachers. And then the last thing I'd like to say is that while we do feel it's generous, we also feel it's important for our teachers to be able to live in the area. We want our students to see our teachers in the grocery stores. We want to see them, walking the streets for exercise. We just want them involved in our community. And we know that living here in Los Gatos is very expensive. And so, we do it to maintain our top decile teachers, but we also, again, want our people to be able to live in our community and be a part of this community.
And just to tag on to that, thank you, Teresa. We want our teachers to be able to bring their own children to school so that they're part and they're integrated within the school community. And I just wanted to put an exclamation point behind prudent fiscal management, because in other school districts, it's just the 2 out years. And that's not a very good way to do long-term forecasting for a vision. And because of that approach, we are able to prioritize our teachers. And the teachers are the bread and butter of the school district.
And Paul, I want to add to that. To build on that, in our strategic plan, it states that we want to attract and retain top-tier teachers. And part of that, looking at our funding model, is our robust professional development opportunities. And to speak to our Director of Student Services and Director of Curriculum and Instruction, they have put their heads together and have listened to the voices of teachers through CIA leadership teams. And it's with that input that we have developed a really robust plan on how to support inclusive practices, which means when students might be neurodivergent in the general ed classroom, how are we giving them what they need and keeping them within the general education classroom? And that is a huge cost savings to our district. But in order to successfully do that, we continue to build teacher capacity every single year, and we're committed to continuing to do that.
Mm-hmm. Great. I think we have another question that's come in. Can you share how much of my property tax check goes to LGUSD? I am paying tens of thousands of dollars in property tax, so where does it go? And Teresa, I don't know if you're going to have this off the top of your head, but we do have a breakdown.
And
that.
so, yes, I certainly don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but something that might be helpful in answering that question would be referencing the property tax pie chart. That was the slide I began on. It does show, at least from the city of Los Gatos, how taxes are broken down here. So that would be my best answer, is looking at your property tax total and then kind of breaking it down by those percentages. Also happy, to work individually with that person, if they ever wanted to come by and look at it. I learned from that as well. So that's why I offer that. So when I work with one person and I break down their property tax bill, I learn how that works for a lot of people. And so again, that's always a learning experience for me. So whoever has the question in the chat, if you're ever interested in really looking into that and getting into the weeds, I am happy to get into the weeds with you. So
I think too, Teresa, we could definitely post that question to the FAQ, and we could put the breakdown as a follow-up.
And it was on a previous slide, so it's 23.2%, according to the town of Los Gatos.
Okay. Oh, great, thank you. All right. Are there any other questions in the chat? Okay.
No, Paul, there are no further questions.
Okay. I'm just curious, Jen Shapiro, who's run the campaign for the last couple of years, do you have any reflections on anything that you've heard? Or
I just want to say that every time I hear the district speak and explain all this, and as you said, I've been involved with it for the past 5 years since it began. The things I just beam with pride of the quality of education we provide for our children, and I've just been so fortunate to be a part of that, and to further this and to look back at where we started and where we are now, and then even to look ahead to where we're going. It's just so exciting, and I think every year just gets better and better, and I knowing how getting to know all the principals and the LGUSD staff and administration has when you know all that goes in to making our schools what they are, it's an incredible amount of moving pieces and thoughtfulness that are put together, and I'm just forever amazed by all that you do, and grateful that my children had the opportunity to, for the past 9 years, to be part of this, and I can see it in them, where all the pieces that you've put into this to build them, to make them the boys they are today, the men who will be going on to high school next year. And I thank you for all that you've done. And again, I'm excited to see where you will go.
yeah.
I
To
just wanted to
piggyback
say,
on that.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
When I found out I was pregnant with our surprise baby 5 years ago, I went to a home and school club board meeting and made my big announcement. And I said, I feel so lucky that I've gotten to see where the districts come from Carter to Chase. And now I get to see where it's going to go with Cameron too. So thank you guys, to piggyback on Jen. You are all amazing and we appreciate you so much.
I just want to, while we have Jen, because her boys will be promoting soon, and it has been my pleasure to work with you, Jen. And you, when I joined Fisher, you were there raring to go, welcomed me with open arms, and ushered me into this whole One Community program. So I'm taking this public opportunity to say thank you, because you were the ones sending us spreadsheets and updates and emails and all the things we needed to be able to do our jobs to support One Community and LGEF. And I just, knowing that your time with us is you know, you're gonna graduate, Jen. I just wanted to say thank you in front of everyone because it's been my pleasure to work with you, and it's been a pleasure to have the boys and see them grow and become young men. So just thank you very much for everything that you've done for us and for One Community and the kids in our district.
You're welcome.
Jen,
My
it's come a
pleasure.
long way since that lunch in my office.
Yes.
So thank you so much. Amanda and Beth, the mighty co-treasurers of LGF, do you have anything to add to that? And you're both on FAC, Financial Advisory Committee as well. I don't know if you have anything to add or.
I would just say that as a, as a finance person, thanks for entertaining me and listening to my numbers, because it has been a really very interesting journey. I've only been on the board for a couple of years, but it really is inspiring to see all the things that are even accomplished in just the 2 years that I've been involved. I can only imagine looking back, 5, 6, 7 years, the transformation that has happened. So it's been really wonderful to be a part of this group. I feel very fortunate to have my kids in the district. And so just thank you to everyone.
Oh, great. Thank you. So
Gonna
I don't
say,
see Beth?
No, it's okay. I just want to be respectful of everyone's time, but any other questions that come through, we will answer them. Any finance related questions or whatever, I know we will help Teresa answer them, and so they can come through.
And we'll be following up with an FAQ, and appreciate everybody's attendance this evening and the panelist. And with no further questions, I think we'll wrap this up.
And before our attendees leave, tomorrow you'll receive a survey link. So please take the survey and look for those FAQs and the recording one day next week. And thank you for being here.
And buy your Harlem Wizards tickets. We hope to
Yes.
see you there.